Here's something that'll blow your mind. Researchers have discovered that certain processed foods might be as addictive as drugs, literally rewiring our brain's reward system the same way cocaine does.
That's such a concerning revelation when you consider how these foods are everywhere we turn. How did we get to this point?
Well, it all comes down to what scientists call hyper-palatable foods, items specifically engineered with the perfect combination of sugar and fat to trigger intense cravings. Studies showed that about 70% of the foods in our modern diet fall into this category.
So you're telling me that food companies are essentially creating addictive substances and marketing them as everyday snacks?
Exactly right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Research shows that chronic stress can actually enhance our sensitivity to these foods by up to 40%. It's all connected to this system in our body called the HPA axis. Think of it as our stress command center.
Hmm. That explains why I demolished an entire bag of chips during my last work deadline.
That's a perfect example of how stress affects eating patterns differently. Acute stress, like your work deadline, typically suppresses appetite in about 80% of people. But chronic stress, that's where things get complicated. Studies show it can increase caloric intake by up to 40% in susceptible individuals.
The way you're describing it makes me think about how my late night cravings seem completely out of control sometimes.
That's because they practically are. Research has identified this fascinating system called the Meso-Limbic Dopaminergic Pathway, our brain's pleasure highway. When we're under chronic stress, this system actually changes how it responds to food. Studies show that stress can increase dopamine response to high calorie foods by up to 50%.
Well, that certainly helps explain why my eating habits completely fall apart during stressful periods.
And here's another crucial piece of the puzzle: sleep deprivation. Recent studies show that just one night of poor sleep can increase ghrelin levels, our hunger hormone, by up to 15%. Meanwhile, it decreases leptin, our satiety hormone, by about 20%.
That really puts into perspective why I always reach for sugary foods after a bad night's sleep.
The numbers are pretty striking. Researchers found that sleep-deprived individuals consume an average of 385 additional calories per day. And get this, about 90% of those extra calories come from high fat, high sugar foods.
So what can people actually do with all this information? It seems like we're fighting against our own biology.
Well, the research points to some promising strategies. Studies show that mindfulness based stress reduction can decrease stress related eating by up to 40%. And when people prioritize sleep, getting at least 7 hours per night, they report a 25% reduction in cravings for hyper-palatable foods.
Those are some pretty significant improvements. But it seems like such a complex issue to tackle.
That's why researchers are pushing for a more comprehensive approach. Traditional weight loss methods focusing solely on willpower fail about 95% of the time. Instead, new treatment protocols addressing stress, sleep, and potential food addiction show success rates closer to 60%.
Looking at these numbers really highlights how oversimplified most weight loss advice has been.
Absolutely right. And here's something else to consider. Studies show that individuals who understand these biological mechanisms are 30% more likely to maintain long-term weight loss. It's about working with our biology, not against it.
That understanding certainly takes some of the shame out of the equation.
And that's crucial because research shows that shame and stigma can increase cortisol levels by up to 30%, which then feeds back into those problematic eating patterns. The good news is that as we understand more about these connections, we're developing more effective interventions.
This whole conversation really makes me look at eating patterns in a completely different light.
That's exactly the shift researchers are hoping for. When we recognize that we're dealing with complex neurobiological adaptations rather than just willpower, we can develop more effective solutions. Studies suggest this understanding alone can improve treatment outcomes by up to 40%. So use this information to discover some new strategies for handling those late night cravings for junk foods.